The first time I realized something was wrong was when my best friend cried harder than I did at my wedding. Not the quiet, polite tears people wipe away with the corner of a tissue. I mean the kind of crying that shakes your shoulders, the kind that steals your breath and makes your hands tremble. I remember standing at the altar, my bouquet heavy in my hands, my fingers numb beneath the lace gloves, and thinking, why does she look like she's the one being left behind? But that thought passed as quickly as it came, because that day was supposed to be perfect, and when you're happy, truly happy, you don't question the people you trust the most. I wish I had. The morning of my wedding smelt like hairspray, coffee, and the roses my mother insisted on placing in every corner of the room. The sun came in soft through the hotel curtains, pale and forgiving, like it was blessing the day before it even began. My best friend, Lena, sat cross-legged on the bed beside me, holding my veil up to the light. "Can you believe this?" she said softly. "You're really doing it." Her voice cracked on the last word. I laughed, brushing my lipstick one more time in the mirror. "I've been doing it for 5 years," I teased. "This is just the paperwork." She smiled, but her eyes didn't. There was something shiny there, too shiny, and I assumed it was emotion. We'd been friends since college. She knew every version of me, the girl who cried over exams, the woman who stayed in love through arguments and lean months, the fiancé who still ironed her own dress because she didn't trust anyone else to touch it. Lena had been there through all of it. She helped me choose this dress, ivory, simple, with tiny pearl buttons down the back. She'd stood in the fitting room, her hands clasped over her mouth, whispering, "He's going to lose his mind when he sees you." She held my hand while my mother cried. She steadied my shoulders when my nerves made me dizzy. She told me over and over, "You deserve this. You deserve to be happy." I believed her. My husband, God, it still feels strange calling him that even now, was named Evan. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party, the kind where everyone pretends they're not evaluating each other's futures. He was quiet at first, observant. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it felt measured, careful, like he didn't waste words. That impressed me. We built a life slowly, no fireworks, no dramatic love story, just evenings on the couch, grocery lists on the fridge, shared routines that turned into comfort. He kissed my forehead when he passed by me in the kitchen. He remembered how I liked my tea. He held me when my father passed away and didn't try to fix my grief. He just stayed. Lena loved him from the start, or so I thought. "She's like a sister to me," I told Evan early on. "You'll see." And he did see. He saw her often. She came over for dinner. She joined us for holidays. She laughed at his jokes, sometimes a little too hard, but I brushed it off. Lena had always been expressive, emotional. She wore her heart close to the surface. I trusted both of them. That was my mistake. At the ceremony, when the music started and I stepped into the aisle, I remember searching the crowd for familiar faces. My mother was crying. My aunt clutched her purse like it was a life raft. Evan stood at the front, his hands folded, his face open and soft. And Lena, she was in the second row. Her mascara ran in thin black lines down her cheeks. She pressed her hand to her mouth, sobbing silently, as if trying not to disturb the moment. Our eyes met. She nodded at me, a sad nod, a nod that said, "Go on." Something in my chest tightened then, just briefly, a quiet tug of unease, but the music swelled and my heart filled with everything else. Love, hope, relief that I'd made it to this day without tripping or fainting or losing my mind. I married Evan, believing I was surrounded by people who loved me. I was wrong. The affair didn't start after the wedding. It didn't start on our honeymoon. It started before the vows were spoken, before I ever walked down the aisle, before Lena ever helped me zip up my dress. I just didn't know it yet. After the wedding, life settled into something that looked happy from the outside. We moved into our apartment, we framed wedding photos, we argued over small things, dirty dishes, forgotten errands, and made up easily. Lena remained close, too close if I'm honest. She called Evan when she couldn't reach me. She texted him jokes meant for both of us. She stopped by unannounced sometimes, saying she just so happened to be in the neighborhood. I told myself, she's lonely. She's always been afraid of being left behind. And maybe she was. But loneliness doesn't excuse betrayal. The first real crack appeared 3 months into my marriage on a Tuesday evening that felt painfully ordinary. I came home early from work, the kind of early that still surprises you, keys jingling too loudly in the quiet hallway. The apartment smelt like citrus cleaner, sharp and unfamiliar. Evan was in the shower, and Lena's coat hung on the back of the chair, not folded, not placed neatly, just tossed there, casual, familiar. My stomach dropped. She must have stopped by, I said out loud, trying to convince myself with the sound of my own voice. But something felt off. The living room was too tidy, the couch cushions fluffed, 2 coffee mugs sat in the sink.
2. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to the water run, my heartbeat loud in my ears. When Evan came out, towel around his waist, he startled slightly when he saw me. "You're home early," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Yeah," I replied. "Lena was here?" He paused, just for a second. "Yeah," he said. "She stopped by. Didn't stay long." I nodded. I didn't push. Not yet. Because when you love someone, you don't start with accusations. You start with doubt, quiet doubt. And that doubt, once planted, begins to grow on its own. That night, lying beside him in bed, I stared at the ceiling while his breathing evened out. I thought about Lena's tears at my wedding, about the way she'd held my hand just a little too tightly, about how Evan always seemed to know things about her life before I told him. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. And for the first time since I said I do, I felt afraid, not of losing my marriage, but of learning the truth. Some betrayals don't announce themselves, I would later learn. They wait patiently, smiling at you from across the room. The next morning, I woke up before Evan. That alone wasn't unusual. I'd always been the lighter sleeper. But what was different was the way my body felt. Tight, alert, like something inside me had shifted gears overnight and refused to slow back down. Evan lay beside me, one arm flung across the pillow where my head had been, his face relaxed, untroubled. I watched him for a long moment, searching for something, guilt maybe, or a crack in the calm, but his expression gave nothing away. I slipped out of bed quietly and padded into the kitchen. The apartment was still clean, too clean. The faint citrus smell lingered, sharp against the scent of coffee I brewed. I stood at the counter, staring at the slow drip into the mug, thinking about how many times Lena had helped herself to this kitchen, how many times she'd joked that it was basically her second home. I'd laughed then. Now my laughter felt naive. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I hadn't before, or maybe I'd always noticed them and chosen not to name them. Evan guarded his phone more carefully. Lena texted me less, but mentioned things she shouldn't have known. Conversation stopped when I entered the room. Small things, easy things to dismiss. She's just busy. He's stressed from work. I'm imagining it. Women are very good at talking themselves out of the truth. One evening, Lena came over for dinner. She brought a bottle of wine and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You look tired," she said, touching my arm lightly. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, just work." Evan poured the wine. He avoided my eyes when he handed me my glass. We ate pasta at the small dining table, the 3 of us squeezed close like always. Lena laughed at Evan's stories. Evan asked about her job. I chewed slowly, tasting very little, watching everything. At one point, Lena reached across the table and brushed a speck of sauce from Evan's sleeve. "Oh," she said lightly, "you're messy." It was such a small gesture, almost nothing, but the way Evan froze, just for a heartbeat, made my chest ache. I excused myself to the bathroom and locked the door behind me. I stared at my reflection. My face looked the same, brown eyes, soft lines beginning to form around my mouth. I pressed my palms to the sink and whispered, "Don't do this to yourself." But a quiet voice inside me answered back, "Someone already did." The night I found proof, it wasn't dramatic. No lipstick on collars, no overheard phone calls, no anonymous messages, just a forgotten tablet. Lena had left it on the coffee table after stopping by for a minute. I didn't notice it until hours later when Evan was already asleep and I was folding laundry. I picked it up to move it aside. The screen lit up. A message notification appeared at the top. From Evan. My hands went cold. I told myself I wouldn't look, that it was an invasion, that if I went digging I might find something I couldn't unsee. But betrayal doesn't wait for permission. I opened the message. "I miss you already." I scrolled. Today was hard, watching her smile like everything's fine. My stomach turned. I hate lying to her. I sat down slowly on the couch, the tablet heavy in my hands, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. There were weeks of messages, photos, late-night confessions, inside jokes that used to belong to me. And then, like a knife twisting deeper, a message dated 2 days before my wedding. "Seeing you cry today almost broke me," Evan had written. I wanted to tell her everything. Lena's reply followed. "Don't, not yet. Let her have her day." I don't remember screaming. I don't remember crying. I remember feeling hollow, like the air had been sucked out of my chest and replaced with ice. They hadn't just betrayed me, they'd planned around me. I didn't confront them that night. I don't know how I managed it, but I put the tablet back where I'd found it. I folded the rest of the laundry. I lay beside Evan and stared at the ceiling until morning. Shock does strange things to the body. It makes you still, careful, quiet. I needed time, not to forgive, to decide. Over the next few days, I pretended. I smiled. I went to work. I texted Lena back when she messaged me, her words suddenly hollow, rehearsed. "How are you, love?" she wrote.
How am I thought. I'm married to a man who sleeps beside me and dreams of you. Instead, I typed, "Fine, just busy." I began collecting evidence, screenshots, dates, times. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet, but I needed to understand the scope of the lie. The affair had started 6 months before the wedding, 6 months of shared dinners, 6 months of wedding planning, 6 months of Lena holding my hand and telling me how lucky I was. I felt sick every time I thought about it. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. One evening I came home early again, this time intentionally. I stood outside the apartment door for a long moment, listening. Laughter drifted through the wood. Her laughter. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. They sprang apart like children caught stealing. Lena's face drained of color. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a second, none of us spoke. Then Lena started crying. "I didn't want this to happen," she said. "I never meant to hurt you." I laughed. A short, broken sound. "You cried at my wedding," I said quietly. "You stood there and watched me marry him." Evan tried to reach for me. I stepped back. "How long?" I asked. Neither answered. "How long?" I repeated. 6 months, Evan whispered. The room felt unbearably small. I nodded once. "Get out," I said to Lena. She hesitated. "Now," I said. She left without another word. I turned to my husband, and felt something inside me harden. "You don't get to choose how this ends," I told him. "I do." That wasn't the end. Not even close.
Because betrayal doesn't stay private forever, and I wasn't done telling the truth. After Lena left that night, the apartment fell into a silence so thick it felt physical. Evan stood in the middle of the living room, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, like he'd forgotten what to do with them. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. That seemed to confuse him more than anything else. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "It just happened." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and wondered how many times he'd practiced those words in his head. "It didn't just happen," I replied. My voice sounded steady, almost distant. "You happened, over and over again." He sank onto the couch, elbows on his knees. "I love you," he said. I felt a sharp, unexpected ache in my chest, not because I believed him, but because I used to. "Love doesn't do this," I said. "Love doesn't cry at someone else's wedding." That made him flinch. He tried to explain. He always did that, used logic like a shield. He talked about stress, about feeling unseen, about how Lena understood him. I listened, not because it mattered, but because I wanted to remember every word. When he finished, I stood. "I need space, and you need to leave." His eyes widened. "Tonight?" "Yes. But where will I don't care," I said. That was the first time I meant it. The days that followed felt unreal, like I was moving through a version of my life someone else had imagined for me. Evan stayed with a friend. Lena texted and called, her messages swinging wildly between apology and self-pity. "I never meant to fall in love. Please let me explain. I miss you." I didn't respond. Instead, I called my sister. I hadn't planned to tell anyone yet. I wanted to keep it contained, controlled. But when she answered, and I heard her voice, warm, familiar, I broke. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she said only one thing: "I'm coming over." That weekend, my family gathered around me in the apartment that no longer felt like home. My sister cooked. My mother folded laundry I hadn't touched. They moved carefully, as if I were something fragile. "What are you going to do?" my sister asked gently. I didn't answer right away, because the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't want revenge that would make me look bitter. I didn't want silence that would protect them. I didn't want to disappear from my own life. "I want the truth out," I said finally, "but I want it on my terms." The opportunity came sooner than I expected. My mother-in-law called to invite us to a family dinner, her birthday, a big one, extended family, friends, toasts. "Evan said you were busy lately," she said. "I hope everything's okay." I smiled to myself, a slow, sad smile. "Yes," I said, "everything will be fine." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I knew what I was going to do. The night of the dinner, I dressed carefully, not for revenge, but for myself. A simple black dress, hair pulled back, no jewelry except my wedding ring. I arrived alone. The room buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. Evan was there, of course. So was Lena. She stood near the window, laughing softly with my cousin, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't shattered my life with careful hands. Our eyes met. Her smile faltered. Dinner passed in a blur, polite conversation, forced laughter. I ate very little. Then Evan's mother stood to make a toast. She talked about family, about love, about honesty. The word hung in the air like a challenge. When she finished, I stood. "I'd like to say something too," I said. The room quieted. Evan's face went pale. Lena looked down at her hands. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch. I want to thank everyone here, I began, for welcoming me into this family, for making me feel like I belonged. I paused. But I also believe families deserve the truth. A murmur rippled through the room.
I found out recently that my husband and my best friend have been having an affair, I said, one that started before our wedding. The words landed heavily, gasps, whispers, someone dropped a fork. Lena stood abruptly, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I never meant—" I held up a hand. "This isn't about your intentions," I said calmly. "It's about your choices." I turned to Evan. "And this marriage is over." I left before anyone could stop me. Outside, the night air felt cool against my skin. My hands shook as I unlocked my car, but my chest felt lighter than it had in weeks. The truth was out, and it was unforgettable. The days after were loud. Phone calls, messages, opinions. Some people supported me, some people questioned me, some people told me I should have handled it privately. But here's what I learned. Silence protects the people who hurt you, and I was done protecting them. The morning after the dinner, I woke up to a phone buzzing itself tired on my nightstand. Messages stacked on top of each other, missed calls, voicemails I didn't listen to right away. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, letting the quiet settle. For the first time since the discovery, I didn't feel frantic. I felt emptied, like a room after furniture has been dragged out. Echoing, yes, but finally honest. When I did reach for the phone, the first message I opened was from Lena. "You humiliated me. I loved him. You didn't have to destroy everything." I read it twice. Then I set the phone back down. That's when I understood something clearly. People who betray you will always find a way to make themselves the victim. Evan showed up that afternoon. I hadn't invited him. I hadn't answered his calls. But there he was, standing in the hallway with his hands in his pockets, looking smaller somehow, older. "I just want to talk," he said. I stepped aside and let him in, not because I owed him anything, but because I was ready to hear him without breaking. He sat at the kitchen table, the same place we'd eaten breakfast for years. "He never wanted it to come out like that," he said. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were steady. "You didn't want it to come out at all," I replied. He nodded, eyes fixed on the table. I panicked. When you stood up, I knew there was no fixing it. "No," I said gently, "there wasn't." He looked up at me then. "Is there any chance?" "No," I said again. The finality in my voice surprised us both. "I loved you," I continued, "but I won't compete with someone who smiled at me while lying to my face." Tears filled his eyes. I felt nothing. That scared me at first, until I realized numbness was a kind of mercy. The divorce was quiet. Painful, yes, but quiet. We split things evenly. There were no screaming matches, no courtroom drama, just paperwork, signatures, and the slow dismantling of a life we'd built together. I moved out of the apartment. The day I packed my things, I found my wedding dress in the back of the closet, still clean, still perfect, still smelling faintly of perfume and pressed fabric. I ran my fingers over the pearl buttons and thought of Lena standing behind me, zipping it up with shaking hands. I didn't cry. I closed the box and donated the dress the next day. Some things don't deserve to be kept. Lena tried to reach me once more. She showed up at my workplace, waiting by my car in the parking lot. "I just want you to hear me out," she said, her voice thin, desperate. I looked at her, the woman who knew my fears, my dreams, my favorite songs, and felt a deep, quiet sadness. "I did hear you," I said, "every time you lied." She started to cry again. She always did that, tears as currency. "I loved him," she whispered. "Then you should have waited until he was free." I walked past her. I didn't look back. That was the last time we spoke.
The hardest part came later, not the betrayal, not the divorce, not even losing my best friend. It was the silence afterwards. Friends didn't know what to say. Some drifted away, others checked in constantly, their concern heavy and exhausting. At night, I lay in my new apartment listening to unfamiliar sounds, the hum of a different refrigerator, footsteps from neighbors I didn't know, and wondered who I was without the roles I'd lost. Wife, best friend, future I thought was certain. I grieved all of it. Healing didn't come in a grand moment. It came in small, ordinary ones. The first time I laughed without guilt. The first morning I woke up without dread. The first day I realized I hadn't thought about them at all. I took a pottery class. My hands learned new shapes. I started walking in the evenings, watching the sky change colors. I cooked meals just for myself, slow and intentional. I rebuilt, quietly. Months later, I ran into Evan at the grocery store. We stood awkwardly near the produce, strangers wearing familiar faces. He looked tired. "I hope you're well," he said. "I am," I replied, and I meant it. When I walked away, I felt no urge to turn back, no questions left unanswered. Some endings don't need closure conversations. They close themselves. What I learned from all of this is simple, but not easy. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the hands that once held yours. And when it does, you don't owe silence to anyone who broke your trust. You owe yourself the truth. A year passed.
Not the kind of year that feels like a single page turning, but the kind that feels like a whole book being rewritten, slowly, sentence by sentence. By the time the leaves changed color again, my life no longer looked the way I had once planned it, and yet it felt honest, unborrowed, mine. I moved into a small apartment with wide windows and a view of the street below. On weekend mornings, I sat at the window with my coffee and watched the world move without asking anything of me. No one needed me to explain myself. No one expected me to be anything but present. That was new. People often ask when I knew I was healed. The truth is, I didn't. Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It slips in quietly, disguised as routine. I noticed it the day I found my wedding photos while sorting through old boxes. I sat on the floor, surrounded by dust and half-forgotten memories, and flipped through the album slowly. There we were, Evan and me, smiling into the camera, and there was Lena, standing close, her arm linked through mine. I waited for the ache. It didn't come. What I felt instead was distance, like looking at a version of myself from far away. I closed the album, not with anger, but with gratitude for the woman I used to be, the one who trusted fully, the one who loved without fear. She wasn't foolish. She was brave. I stopped thinking of the betrayal as something that happened to me and began seeing it as something that revealed me. It revealed my boundaries, my strength, my ability to walk away without losing my dignity. And it revealed something else, too, something harder to admit, that some people can love you and still harm you, that closeness doesn't guarantee loyalty, that the tears at your wedding might not always be tears of joy. I didn't rush into another relationship. I didn't need to. I learned how to enjoy my own company again, how to fill silence with music, evenings with books, weekends with nothing at all. When loneliness came, I let it sit beside me. I didn't panic. I didn't chase distraction. I learned that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. One afternoon, I received a message from a woman I barely knew, someone who had been at that birthday dinner. "I just wanted to say thank you," she wrote. "Watching you tell the truth that night gave me the courage to leave my own situation." I stared at the message for a long time.
It reminded me that dignity has a ripple effect, that sometimes telling your story, even when your voice shakes, gives someone else permission to save themselves. I never heard much about Lena after that. Someone once mentioned she moved away. Someone else said she and Evan tried to make it work and couldn't. It didn't matter. Their story was no longer connected to mine, and that, more than anything, felt like freedom. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not about revenge or exposure. It's about alignment, about refusing to live in a life where love requires silence, about choosing self-respect over familiarity, about understanding that endings, even painful ones, can be an act of self-trust. I don't regret my marriage. I regret the lies, but I don't regret the woman I became because of them. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment at the altar, the way Lena cried, the way I felt something I couldn't name. Now I know what it was, my intuition whispering. And if I could speak to that version of myself now, I would tell her this: you're not wrong for trusting, you're not weak for loving, and you will survive the truth. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved, by a partner, a friend, a family member, I want you to know this: you don't have to carry their shame, you don't have to protect their comfort, and you don't have to stay quiet to be kind. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up, speak calmly, and walk away with your head held high. Would you have told the truth the way I did, or would you have kept it to yourself? Tell me in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that you're not alone, please consider subscribing. There are more stories here, real ones, honest ones. Thank you for listening.